national interest, and some are also playing politics with the whole stuff. Now, Honorable Felix Mork, are you there with me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, nice to have you join us, 2025. How does it feel?
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Now, the year is still brand new, so it feels good to be alive.
Yeah.
We thank God for that.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, just before we brought you on, we've been talking about the reform, the tax reform and other reforms of this present administration. And despite the convincing arguments out there, there are still narratives on the streets talking about that, look, the tax reform specifically is meant to disadvantage a section of the country. How bothered are you, being a party man, your party is in power, that this narrative is out there?
Well, that's really quite a controversial narrative. I don't want to say it's a false narrative, but it's very controversial. The fact of the matter is that our country has operated a very archaic, really ancient tax system that has not been reformed in any meaningful respect for decades. Now, this is 2025. Most countries of the world, taxation is a pillar, is a core aspect of the economic life of any country. It is a system where government not only just generates revenue in order to deliver on its commitments to citizens, but it's also a system that is supposed to ensure that there's some level of fairness, some level of equity, some participatory justice in that system, so that those who earn a whole lot should pay commensurately. There should be some level of reasonableness in the proportion of commitment to the tax system by citizens based on their earnings. You don't expect somebody a teacher in a primary school who makes, let's say, 10 naira, to pay the same as, somebody who is making, 200 naira. So this effort by this president to reform our tax system is long overdue. This is something that, presidents before him didn't even think about, let alone attempt to do. So I think that, yes, of course, with any policy, you will find those who agree and those who disagree. So, this is not a shocking situation. Yes, some people obviously are, completely in favor of the proposed, tax bills. But there are some who think that maybe from their own perspective, from their own narrow understanding of interests, that the tax bills may not be entirely fair to them. But that's to be expected. But I think that the matter is before the National Assembly, where every section of the country has representatives who can then articulate their views on the tax and express them so Nigerians can understand and follow. That's why we have a National Assembly. This is not a dictatorship where somebody says this is the law and it becomes the law. It is subject to debate, to back and forth between the House of Representatives and the Senate. At the end of the day, whatever they come up with, it is then the president's prerogative to sign it or to withhold accent, depending on how it comes out in the end. So I don't think it's a normal democratic engagement that we're seeing.
Well, Honorable Felix, despite this, tough economic reforms and government insisting that things are getting better, what would you say Nigerians can feel and touch, as effects from these reforms that are positive and, are already impacting their lives?
There's a whole lot to say. Now, there is, you can look at it from two ways. There's a macro level emerging impact, and there's a micro level impact. Now, the micro and the macro don't necessarily go together. Sometimes the macro, is sort of goes ahead of the micro, dining table, kitchen, and
I think we lost your audio there. Honorable Felix, can you still hear us? All right.
Okay, yeah, talking about we have to move forward because even if you look at how to generate revenue, there are countries that depend hugely, largely on taxation to generate their revenue, but we have a solid on oil, and as a nation, if we must break even, we must move forward and
diversify our streams of income, and we already see government doing some certain things like diversifying into agriculture and other sources of energy. Well, we hear that we have Honorable Felix back. Honorable Felix, can you hear us?
I can hear you if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, exactly. Okay, just continue with that line of thoughts.
Yes, I was saying that, you have this macro and micro levels. Now, on the macro side, you can see every sector you look, from farming to, energy to national security, you are clearly seeing a move in the positive direction. For example, I know we all are groaning under, the rising cost of food. But that's for us who are buying food. It's not, easy to manage, the rising prices, so far. However, those who are growing the food are seeing a massive rise in their income, meaning the farmers. Because the rising cost is going to somebody, right? It's going to those who are producing the food. Now, that is a normal, natural unfolding of the economic reform. Because, those who are growing the food are in the productive sector. They are the beneficiaries of the, higher prices that we are all paying. They are reaping the reward, the value of their labor. So what does that mean? In a situation where you are managing reform, it means that there are massive opportunities in the agricultural sector because the country needs food. So those who engage in food production obviously benefit from the rising prices. So it's an incentive, and that's what the economic reform is meant to do, is to give a system of incentive so people to actually, become more productive rather than simply just consume. Look, let me ask you, between the both of you, for example, if I ask you if you have kids, and I ask you how many of your kids are you preparing to go into agriculture to produce food for Nigeria? Maybe I'll be shocked if any one of you has their children preparing to go into the agricultural sector to make food for Nigeria.
Felix, let me come in here.
Who will make food for Nigeria? Somebody has to make food for Nigeria, right? Yes.
Yeah, let me come in here. People will say, yes, he's a party man. That is why you hold this view. Because they'll also push out that, look, there is hunger on the street. Now, I want to go back to your party, the APC, not talking primarily about the government now. During the Christmas visit, the president told governors that, look, you are the engine of change in your respective states. Now, how well is your party, the APC, rallying the APC governors to set an example how it can be done in the various APC states, so that as the president is pushing out policies, you're rallying the various states so that other political parties, other states can begin to cue in and take leadership example from what APC is doing. What are those programs you're trying to push out to your various state governors?
One of the, again, positive things we're seeing with the economic reforms, including the removal of subsidy, is that there's been more money available to all the tiers of government. The state governments are receiving more money from the federal allocation. I mean, in my state of Delta, for example, my state today receives about 40 billion naira a month to get 19 billion before this administration. So their income in Delta has doubled. So yes, state governments must also justify this, increasing revenue that's available to them. They must justify it, especially by investing more in agriculture and in those areas of our, economy that benefits their citizens, people who live, in those states and in the countryside. Now, in talking about the APC states, yes, there are many of our states that are doing well, and other states that are non-APC that are also doing well. I must, be fair. That there are some governors that are not APC as well who are equally doing well. I mean, just recently, I think it was the governor of Kwara State who was, in fact, saying that because of the lack of a lot of storage and preservation facilities, that they now are beginning to export a lot of the produce that is coming out of the farms in the state. Now, yes, it would be good to store food for the future, for when we don't have, the luck to harvest a whole lot. But, exporting food is also not a bad thing because, it brings even, expanded revenue to those who are farming in that state. So, Nasarawa State is moving ahead with agriculture. They're doing very well. And there are a number of states that are, doing quite well. And that trend, other governors that are not doing as good need to, I think, emulate what is going on. Because, we need to take food production as the responsibility of everyone. It's not the president's responsibility necessarily. It is the responsibility of every individual, every state government, every local government. Even the local governments now are getting more money. There's no reason why they cannot go back to the old times of, managing, food inspections like they used to do to ensure that,
Mr. Walker,
we are, using the best practices to, produce food for everyone.
If you can hear me, you are saying all these things, but Nigerians are yet to feel the impact. A bag of rice in the market, as it is right now, is 100,000 plus in the market, and other cost of other food commodities. This is a basic need of every Nigerian, food to start with. And if this is their income is not commensurate to what they are able to buy in the market, how do you expect them to believe, in these reforms?
Now, let me say something. Look, if a bag of rice is selling for 100,000 naira today, obviously, I hear you and I agree with you that there are some people who cannot afford that bag of rice based on their income. Now, let me make distinctions. The people who are, the hardest hit by rising prices are a section of our population, especially those who are in some sort of formal employment, who live on their salaries. In any program of economic reform, salary earners are always at a disadvantage, not just in Nigeria, anywhere in the world. If you study economic reform from any country, developing or developed, it is those people on fixed wages that bear the brunt of economic transformation. In the meantime, those in the productive sectors, those who are growing rice, are not complaining. You must understand that. Those in Nigeria who are growing local rice are the ones who are receiving that 100,000 naira that you say is the price of rice.
Mr. Felix.
Now, please, can I finish my thought?
Okay.
Please. Because we need to have this conversation so that those at home can relate to the point. Because it's not a straight jacket. You can't just frame it. It's 100,000 if everybody's suffering. The man who is growing the rice is not suffering. He's making 100,000 naira per bag of rice that he produces. So his economy is, looking good. Okay? Now, the man who is growing yam, please, let me finish. The man who is growing yam is also, in terms of aggregate income, he's doing better. But let me tell you what's going on. With time, this economic reform will begin to, mop up the excess labor that you have in the market that is causing the wages to remain low. When more wealth is created, more employment is generated, more people get jobs, and fewer people are in the labor market. You're going to find, with time, that labor wages will begin to rise because competition for labor will become even stronger. Now,
How long?
There are workers everywhere.
How long do Nigerians have to wait? Even in terms of minimum wage. Minimum wage stands at 70,000 naira, and we have, the cost of living skyrocketing. When is this going to match up?
Okay, when you ask that question, please put it in context. This president and this program of reform is barely 18 months old. Nigeria was dealing with poverty in 2001. In 1999, there was poverty in the country. You know, food at that time, you may say bag of rice was 7,000, but not everybody had 7,000 naira at that time. This is a relative conversation. 7,000 naira by then, some citizens struggled to buy a bag of rice. So let's not make it sound like because the 100,000.
Mr. Felix, I still want to bring back this issue. You're talking about before this present government that not everyone was struggling to buy a bag of rice. We're not specifically talking about rice, but what we're saying is whilst the government is talking about reforms and is pushing out policies, appreciable policies to help reform what we have never done before, we must also put in perspective that the cost of living is very high out there. Even if a farmer, if he harvests his rice and he sells and he's making 100,000, like you said, he still has other things to buy that is way beyond his wage limit. So at the end of the day, what we're asking is, for how long will you expect that Nigerians should bear with the reforms? Because there should be like a terminal period.
My dear brother, the question is that when you ask for how long, you're asking for calendar time. Now, there's nowhere, even with the people that you and I will acknowledge have done the very best in the economy to, completely set the economy on a path of sustainable growth. It's not about the calendar. The transformation that happens in countries is not. Now, what I can tell you is that in 18 months, we have gone from, where we were to where we are today, where we are seeing, some massive steps in progress. The prices you're talking about, the cost of living, will only begin to resolve now. The president in his New Year's speech did say to Nigerians that he's working hard to bring down, that inflationary bracket to a lower threshold that will become easier for Nigerians to manage.
All right.
That is the work in progress. So I'm saying that this president was elected for a 4-year term, and 18 months so far, programs have been, rolled out. The results are showing. I am saying that, just like he said, Nigerians need to simply just, hold a little.
Okay. Nigerians need to hold. Now, let me quickly take you to another issue now. Let's move away a bit from this tax reform. Let's also talk about 18 months of this present administration. We've seen Dangote refinery is producing. We've seen the Port Harcourt refinery producing. We're talking about the Warri refinery also coming on stream. Are these positive deal breakers for this government and for your party, especially if you put in perspective the various alignment and mobilization of political forces, saying that, look, we're going to get this government out of space in 2027. Do you see these positive changes in the petroleum sector as good deal breaker for the government?
No, certainly. You see, that's that, we're not there yet, but clearly there's a pathway to emerging from this period of our economic life into a more prosperous future. The energy sector you just brought up is a perfect example. You can see how the government's intentional policies are beginning to incentivize that sector and to make it come alive. Dangote is there. Now, Bua refinery, as I read recently, is nearing completion. So imagine when Bua refinery also begins to crack, and all of these other refineries are working. Nigeria will become a net exporter of petroleum products. That is good for our economy. That will help to begin to bring down a lot of the pressure on the economy. So, we can't jump over it. We can't fast track it, unreasonably. It's not possible. But I'm saying that the benefits of all of these changes in the energy sector will sooner or later lead to more employment, better wages, which will again absorb a lot of the labor force that is surplus while employers are not willing to, raise wages. When wages, labor becomes scarce or more scarce, wages go up. That is a natural economic, response. So my point is that, the price of fuel and products, even the marketers recently were forecasting that they see prices dropping even more than it has dropped already. Now, it's a trend that we hope will continue. And if it continues, Nigerians, the taxi driver, the Okada rider, all of us, who own vehicles, who use energy, we benefit from it. That is the idea. So, but it takes time for all of that to happen. Dangote is producing now, but Dangote was not producing, 4 years ago. So it took time to build that refinery. Now that they're producing, this is the first Christmas I can remember in recent times where we were all celebrating Christmas without spending, half of our time at the filling stations. Yes, it may be still, costly, but at least it's available. The issue of price will resolve with time when economies of scale set in and begin to get, production to align with consumption. And then you see, that price, differential coming down for the benefit of our people.
Mr. Felix, your party has labeled the presidential candidate of the Labour Party as a prophet of doom because of his criticisms of President Bola Tinubu's action. He seems to still enjoy, the support of some Nigerians on his claims. What do you have to say about this?
Look, quite frankly, I regret that a man in Peter Obi's standing who contested for the office of president would indulge in this level of, flippancy, quite frankly. It's one thing for a statesman or, somebody who, operates at that level to have his view. And he's entitled to his own opinions about, how he perceives the government or the economy. But he's not entitled to mislead anybody. He's not entitled to, conjure up false narratives and expect that everybody should simply embrace it. Look, whatever Peter Obi says, and like any other politician, whatever they say, there are people who will, who are just blinded, who will support them irrespective of, what they say, even if they call for something outrageous. They will still support them. That's normal. But, but that doesn't mean that everyone should, kowtow in that, unreasonableness. Look, for me, Peter Obi's, and if you notice, look, I'm the spokesman as the spokesman of the party. I have been very restrained in my commentary and critique of Peter Obi's very outlandish claims. But, when you say the president must never go abroad for medical treatment or, the president, should do ABC, that is fine. It's your views, it's your suggestion. But Peter Obi himself, just after he made those, broadcasts, videos were showing up where he was talking about his medical trip abroad to do surgery, and where in the UK he met a doctor. The first doctor he met was, somebody called Ayo, and the second one was somebody called Obina. His point was that a lot of Nigerian doctors were, operating in the UK. Meaning that Peter Obi himself, goes to the UK to do surgery and take care of himself. Nobody, please, can I finish? Nobody is suggesting that everybody should be. We should build our health infrastructure to the point where we can all save ourselves with our health system. That is what this president is doing. Recently, the Minister of Health, Mr. Pate, Dr. Pate, just announced that we have, brand 22 new, world-class medical facilities that are being, supported by a consortium of investors. That is good news. Today, it's not built, but the government is on it. And in a couple of months or a couple of years, we're going to have these facilities available, producing medical supplies and medicine, in our country, creating employment. See, look, there's anybody who is that we need to continue to import food and import medicine. For that, we can't continue to import medicine. That era is over. The president has said, and I agree with him.
Yeah. Quite interesting. You're talking about the health sector. Somebody will say that Peter Obi is not the president. Probably that is why whatever medical trip is going abroad for, people might not take it seriously. But what I'm trying to say now is that, what I'm trying to point out, just listen to my question now, is that just as the president brought out reforms in the tax reform and in the petroleum sector, we're also likely to have reform in the health sector so that, like you said, we'll be able to build a health facility to the point where we can all depend on our local facilities, whether it's the primary health system or the secondary or the tertiary.
That program is on already. I just cited an example of the massive program that is underway. That is, as we speak, this group of investors, frontline investors, are already on, building these 22 complex systems for the production of medicines and health supplies in Nigeria and medical facilities as well. Now, again, all of what we're discussing is happening in 18 months. Can you imagine what will happen in the fullness of the term of this president? There's a reason our constitution gave a 4-year term to elected officials to function, because the law and the constitution recognizes that between conception and implementation and outcome is a gestation. Like everything else in the world, when you plant a seed today, it grows tomorrow. My point is that the health system, our educational system, our energy sector, our even power sector. I know that people talk about the negatives all the time. They talk about how the country is struggling and dealing with the collapse of the grid. But we must also understand that in many areas of this country, power has been available like it has never been available before. Even though, yes, we're paying more for it, but it's available. You see, these things, we find balance. Now, people focus on, it's too costly, but it's available. But before, you were paying, it was not available. We must see incremental progress in the program that this government has, is enacting, and to support the government so that we can fine-tune it and get it better. It's not perfect. The president is the first to admit that it's perfect so far in the country. The reforms and their outcomes are not perfect. They are not perfect because the time and the gestation has not, run its full course. When it does, I think that the energy sector we're referring to, the power sector, the health sector, Nigerians are in for a massive surprise.
Well, Mr.
And
Felix,
let me tell you, and I must make this point before you stop me, that a lot of those in the opposition are worried. They are concerned, Peter Obi included, Atiku Abubakar included. They are worried that if this president is allowed to implement this program of reform to the fullness, they know that by doing so, without meaning to, these individuals will become almost irrelevant. Nigerians will, compensate this president by inviting him to serve a second term come 2027.
Well, I was going to ask you if you think amidst all these criticisms and the assessment of your the current administration, if your party stands a chance in the next general election. Do you think so?
Oh, I just said it, that I don't say we stand a chance because of what the campaign we're going to wage. We're going to wage a decent campaign, but we stand a chance, especially because by 2027, many of what we're discussing today, you're going to invite me back here, and it will be a new day in Nigeria where we are seeing more, undisputed, indisputable outcomes, positive outcomes of these reforms, where Nigerians in their homes will say, you know what, yes, it was tough for a while, but I think it begins to look like things are getting better. Maybe we need to give this president the chance to finish what he has started. And by the time it's done, this country will be one of the
we must thank you very specially for your thoughts with us on the program this morning, but this is where we'll have to leave it this morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Felix Morka, for your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Mr. Eshomomo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, quite interesting conversation.
Quite interesting.
This government is on the positive step that, look, Nigerians will beg that they should have another term.
Well, thank you so much. That's it from us in Abuja. Over to you in Lagos, Veronica.
All right, thank you, Tijesu and Eshomomo. Quite an interesting conversation you had with Felix Morka there. Thank you. All right, it's time for